Back at it again with another video. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. My videos have been doing really great lately, so thank you for engaging and watching and viewing and being so amazing. So, this video is all about the tripolar world that we live in terms of economics. In terms of military, the United States has the best military in the world. China's military is growing. The EU doesn't have a standing army, but it has, over 25 different nations that have armies. But this is talking about economics. So, a tripolar economic world between the US, the EU, and China. So, I have used this video before, article before, from the website Visual Capitalist. The European Union economy, the four biggest, Spain, Italy, France, and Germany. So overall, $16 trillion, the economy of the European Union. The UK also has a pretty sizable GDP as well, so if you would add the UK back into the EU, that would probably be somewhere $18-19 trillion. But the Brits left, so ultimately the EU has become an economic force. Gross GDP at 16.6 trillion, US at 26, and China at about 19. So we have EU GDP at 16.6, 19 trillion for China, and about 26 trillion for the United States. So if you add all those together, you add 26 plus 19 for China, that's 45. And then you add in 16 for the European Union, that is $61-ish trillion between the EU, the United States, and China. So over $60 trillion between three big economic players. The EU over here at 16.6, the US at 26, and China just a little under 20. So what is roughly global GDP? Now, I have no idea if 112.6 trillion is the actual estimate of global GDP, but that sounds somewhere in the ballpark of being accurate. So, if the global GDP is roughly 112-ish trillion, and then you divide 112 by 2, you're looking at about $56 trillion, split in half, roughly. If you take 112 divided by 2, you get 56 trillion. And we just concluded that the EU, the United States, and China have a GDP of roughly a little over 61 trillion. So just these three economic powerhouses, the EU, the United States, and China, make up roughly half, if not more than half, of the entire global GDP. Other important players within that, making up other, parts of the global GDP, you got Japan, South Korea, Canada, the United Kingdom, emerging economies such as a BRICS, that was, Brazil, India, the Russian economy at this point is in free fall because of the war in Ukraine. But yeah, if global GDP is roughly 110-ish trillion dollars, then these three, two countries, United States, China, and one, government institution on the European continent, the EU. This is a very tripolar world. These three make up roughly ish half of the global GDP, which would entail that, economically speaking, that we are now in a tripolar world between the US, EU, and China, economically speaking. Now, again, I don't know if all those numbers I just spewed at you were entirely accurate. I'm going to roll with it that I hope it's accurate. EU at about 16, US at about 26, China a little under 20, and global GDP somewhere in the 110 trillion range. If those numbers hold, and I'm pretty sure they do, then we are currently living in a tripolar economic world between the US, EU, and China, and other players make up the other parts of the global economy. So this is moving in the next year, the next couple of years, the next 5-10 years, next couple of decades. It's going to be very interesting to see how this tripolar world, economically speaking, pans out. Do any of these economies, grow exponentially? Do they grow steadily? Do they, is there some hard times, potentially for any of these? So it's going to be very interesting to see within the next decade, couple decades, how this tripolar economic world functions, how it'll look like in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Ultimately, the EU can keep enlarging, and they can bring more players and more countries into the European Union. So you add more countries, you add more GDP, and then the United States and China keep growing economically. The GDPs of these three continue to grow. So I find this particularly fascinating. We live in a world where much of the global economy is made up by these three, living in a tripolar world. So with that being said, that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching. I really hope I got much of those statistics correct, because if I did not, that'd be kind of embarrassing, and we don't want that. So with that being said, that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Deuces.